Radio Free Skaro!
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Radio Free Skaro, episode number 843. I am Stephen in Edmonton.
Morning, Vancouver.
And Chris in Edmonton.
We had to take some more coffee and rev ourselves up a little bit more this morning because here in North America, folks, we've sprung forward. Sprang forward?
Mm-hmm.
Sprang forward.
Crawled out of the torpor that is the bed.
According to the meme I saw over Facebook, David Lee Roth reminded us to jump forward an hour.
Davey the Roth can just go right back to bed. Thank you very much.
I think so too, actually. Because it's daylight saving time, as Gary Cole's character on Veep would be very wise to point out. Are we in Mountain Daylight Time or Standard Time now?
I'm
the
not.
expert on
I
this.
have no idea.
We're in daylight time right now.
We're in Daylight Time. Okay, so MDT, Mountain Daylight.
I believe,
time.
as Leonard Cohen once said, it's closing time.
A song later covered by Smash Mouth. I don't know who covered it.
The Supersonic's version was quite different.
Supersonics. Was it the same song? It wasn't the same song, was it? No. Okay. So there's different
Semisonic.
Semisonic. It says the Supersonics. You know, you're talking about the Seattle basketball team that moved to Oklahoma City to become the Thunder. Today, I like how we whenever the news list is going to be, light as this week is kind of for Doctor Who news, we thought, now's the perfect time to drop in a 58-minute Miniscope because that'll be the whole episode. It won't be just a warning, folks. We'll probably talk this out for 40 minutes before the Miniscope. But
Stephen wants to talk about Star Trek.
No, I don't.
Sure does.
I don't that much. But Ian Stuart Black Miniscope. Ian Stuart Black, the writer of The Savages, The War Machines, and The Macra Terror. Thankfully, he didn't direct them because we'd have a hard time talking about his directing in those three stories because 2/3 of them don't exist. But so we'll be talking about that later on in the episode. Patreon supporters heard this a while back because it came out on our Patreon feed. That's what we do for our Patreon supporters. We put our commentaries and our miniscopes and other such special treats that we record in advance out on the Patreon feed.
Bonus or is it a warning? It's up to you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Scare them away.
No, the only thing I want to talk about Star Trek, because Star Trek's back. For some reason, there are two shows going on at the same time because, I'll tell you why, because they ran out of time on Discovery and they had to take a 5-week break to finish it. And so they only just now, last week, I think, locked the finale of Star Trek Discovery, which airs, this week. So that's funny that even in this day and age, with all the technology and everything, we basically deadlines are a thing that blow by everyone. So I found that
you'd
funny.
think, if anything, it might even be tougher these days, because as we've talked about in the past, like late '60s, season 6 era Doctor Who, like they were wrapping episodes a week before broadcast, 10 days before broadcast. Like it was, they were up against it. And that was a lot more basic of a thing. Obviously, the tools involved were also a lot more basic, of course, but with the effect shots and whatever that have to get tacked on these days.
I don't know if it makes a difference, but I follow one of the editors of Discovery, and he works from home still. So whether that is better or worse is up to you. But
so if everyone was crowded together in the same office and without masks, you could see their faces talk. Yeah, they've done
until they all went home with COVID. In which case, nothing would get done.
No, the other thing I want to talk about, it just makes it, this is the thing when you have like a set schedule. Okay, we'll do Discovery here to here, and then Picard will be here to here, and then Strange New Worlds will be here to here, and then but so if one actually falls out of schedule as Discovery did, all of a sudden you're thinking, well, we can't delay the other one, so guess what? Picard and Discovery are dropping on the same day, and so.
Here's the thing, Stephen. We both work for TV. Why are either of us surprised that everything is ramshackle nonsense? Of course it is. The only thing I wanted to bring up is I watched the first two. I'm not going to go into plot details and stuff, but I will say that the each of the two Picard episodes were directed by different people, and the second one was much better in my opinion. The first one, and I can't remember the names of the directors of who worked on each, but it's stuff like this why we do stuff like the Miniscope to sort of focus on directing and stuff, because when
there's one directorial style on Star Trek where it's like the camera's always sort of just gently moving sometimes, and like there's lots of cuts and stuff. The music is building, and it's like it's trying to create a pace that isn't really there, and so it's just trying to create some intensity. But then when you have your lead actor, who is an 81-year-old Titan, but is still 81 years old and sort of is delivering his lines a little more deliberately. When I was watching that first episode of Picard for season 2, I just felt like whenever Patrick Stewart was starting to talk, and then the edits were coming, and the music was building, it almost felt like the director was just basically sort of like, hurry up, come on, hurry up. Like he's basically trying to play him off. And so you can get done with the scene. And I was like, match your directorial pace to the actors is what my complaint was. And in episode 2, the director did that. And there was like a lot more static scenes. There was a lot more intensity building and stuff. And like the dialogue was allowed to breathe a lot more. And so Patrick Stewart's performance, I think, came through a lot better in the second episode. This is what I noticed. If I don't know if anyone else notices this at all, but or if you want to go back and watch the first 2 episodes of Picard again, but have a look at just how paced the scenes are, particularly the ones with Patrick Stewart in them. And
in the second episode, Stewart's also got more meat to work with. Like he gets to yell, he gets to do more, which I think he's supposed to be impact as well.
Nominally a baddie, which sort of, kind of.
Yeah. Well, the way that they filmed them was I agreed with them more. I often, like, whenever I remember when Mandalorian and Discovery were going out basically the same day, and so we'd watch one or the other on either days or something. And I've always been impressed with that it's very much a Sergio Leone Western mystique.
Yeah, of course.
That Mandalorian and Boba Fett are going for. And so there's a lot of like long static shots on tripods, and there's no forced movement. The intensity and the tension are happening on screen by nothing happening, which I like. I
guess who you can blame for that in Star Trek? That's right, J.J. Pointless Movement Abrams.
Yeah, it feels like he sort of set that in stone there in the movies, didn't he? And that sort of became
and in Star Wars too, to a certain extent.
A little bit, I guess. Yeah. Anyway, these are things that
they fly now.
Okay, let it go, Warren. Let that one go.
Nope, I never will.
I know you won't.
Ruined a 40-year.
Here we go.
Way to go, bravo, Abrams. Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah. Well, I liked it. Anyway, Doctor Who is apparently returning next month on Easter weekend, supposedly. This is the great thing about we have Star Trek series colliding into one another.
Hold on 1 second. You complain about Star Trek for 10 minutes, but I make one comment of Rise of Skywalker, and I'm wrong. I don't know.
No, well, you've never just made one comment about the Rise of Skywalker.
Did. It's done.
No.
We're good.
Well, I mean, for the past 3 years you've been doing this, but
the same with you in Star Trek. So here we are. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Anyway, waiting for Doctor Who. Doctor Who's coming back at some point, but and Doctor Who's going to be coming back in the 60th anniversary too. But Christopher Eccleston at a convention in Melbourne, Australia. He had to fly to Australia to make comments that was picked up by every single clickbait site on the internet. Has said, no way am I doing no multi-Doctor Who story. They're a cash grab, and you only get, if you wanted me in a Doctor Who story, you only get me alone. That's what he said. And that was picked up everywhere because people are starting for Doctor Who news.
What he's saying here, because other than, I guess, Day of the Doctor, sure, I suppose. But 3 Doctors, 5 Doctors, 2 Doctors, Twice Upon a Time, none of those are a cash grab in any way.
Day of the Doctor having a theatrical release, I mean, I can kind of see what he's talking about, but beyond that, like you say, no. I mean,
and also it's the 50th anniversary. Why wouldn't you celebrate it?
Yeah.
I mean, there's how much crossover stuff have we had of late in like the comics and all that as well, like 10th and 13th Doctors and
but okay, here's the other thing: cash grab. The comics don't make that much money, man.
Yeah.
Oh hell no.
Yeah, I don't see them as much of a cash grab.
Also, crossovers in comics are like the rule, not the exception. So.
Very true.
Well, it's a lot easier to do that kind of thing in a comic book.
It's totally Mm-hmm.
It's funny that I see all these like, oh, look at all the Doctors coming back for all the clickbait stuff. We get the Google alerts for the Doctor Who thing, and I look through them and go, nope, rumor, nope, clickbait, nope, because I know that one said, oh, the Matt Smith is coming back. He's most likely not. But David Tennant will be. So, because of course he's going to be the 14th Doctor. You heard it here
David Tennant's
first.
the only true fan.
Yeah, but I don't see any truth in the other rumors that they're all coming back. But
I hope for no truth in the Tennant rumor. But here we are.
Yeah. So we'll see. But apparently Eccleston ain't going to be there. Plus, Eccleston, no offense to Eccleston, but he doesn't look like he did in 2005. And we saw his whole run. We saw him enter and we saw him leave, essentially. So it'll be tough to shoehorn a suddenly older Christopher Eccleston into the lineup. Although go back to Star Trek Picard very briefly, they do their best to explain away, perhaps needlessly,
very needlessly, actually, yes,
aging of actors in key roles.
No need for any of that.
No. Although Doctor Who did it in Time Crash with Peter Davison's.
They did.
True.
And even in Twice Upon a Time, too.
Twice Upon a Time, too.
Screwing up his face or whatever.
Yeah. So, who are we to talk? Anyway, Doctor Who, Legend of the Sea Devils, by the way, I keep meaning to do this. We're in the 50th anniversary of the Sea Devils' first appearance in Doctor Who. Sea Devils are an aquatic race related to the Silurians. For those of you who have not watched Doctor Who over the past 60 years like we have, you might not know who they are because they've never...
Despite none of us having lived to 60.
No, but if you've never watched the classic series, you have no idea who the Sea Devils are. At least you've never seen them. So
well, until the trailer, and then you said, that guy's rad.
That guy's rad. I know.
For you.
All what made it rad, I mean, is the costume and the fact that they adhered to the original design, but that the CG eyeball, assuming it's CG, is what makes it all of a sudden now the Sea Devils look like valid aliens because their eyes
I say
move.
That guy, that could be a lady Sea Devil for all I know.
Yeah, good question. Who knows?
Sounds like a plot for Bookshelf Doctors.
You're damn right. Thank you very much, Chris.
Oh, you got a Sea Devil, right, Warren?
I do indeed, with the old webby. By the way, when you take that clothing off them, they are hideous.
They're pretty hideous with the clothing on as well.
I know, but there you're like, whoa, God, I didn't realize just how bad these dudes look without their webbing.
Yeah.
That's right, I'm web shaming them.
Wow, jeez. Anyway, so there you go. Eccleston convention. Going to Australia to do conventions now. That's quite something. Given
that is one of the most condescending things you said. And he just gave me crap about Rise of Skywalker, and it's even worse than that.
Oh no, it's just that he's But he used to not like do conventions at all. Now he's going to Australia.
Oh, I thought you meant Australia itself doing conventions.
No. Of course, they've always done conventions. It's just that Eccleston. The funny thing is, not to diss Eccleston, and maybe he might have been doing this on stage to just get a reaction and stuff. Of course, it's been taken out of context, which has never happened before in a clickbait website. But
no, sir. Never.
The fact that he says, well, it's just a cash grab. Meanwhile, he's flying off to Australia to do a Doctor Who convention when, 2 years ago, he's thinking, I'd never do a Doctor Who convention. They're cash grabs. Well, he's grabbing his cash
Actors
now.
should do nothing but what's good for their craft, and they should live in abject poverty. That's the rules that I just made up.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's it. I mean, he's...
That's actually writers, Warren, but yeah, I understand what you mean.
No, that's just how it works with writers.
Yeah.
There's nothing... it's supply and demand. He's in demand, so he's giving himself as a supply. That's
true. All right. Well, hey, let's look back in history in our weekly segment called The Time Lash. Now, what's this now? Before we get into this, the music you're hearing underneath here is very important to me.
Okay.
a massive, way too long and far too devoted search for me ended this past week. Very exciting for me. So the tripod. I've bored you about the BBC series, The Tripods from the.
That is correct,
right?
You have bored us.
Well, in season 2 of The Tripods, in the City of Gold, where all the people go and there's it's a cool city, it's a cool set and everything like this. But for all the young slaves who are there to serve the masters in the city, there's a bar, there's a disco, because it's made in 1985, so of course you have to put a disco in there. And it was called the Pink Parrot. And when I watched this show as a kid, I thought the music in this bar is awesome. I loved it. And so I searched for years, literally since the early 90s, to try to find out what this music, where it was from. I searched through so many like stock music catalogs, everything. Shazam didn't help me once that came along, and I was just resigned to like never knowing it. And then all of a sudden, the Tripods Cast, which is a Tripods podcast that has been covering the books and the TV series, retweeted a link from Will Hadcroft saying, "Oh, by the way, here's the music." And there it was. And so just on Twitter, if I wasn't looking at Twitter at that random time, I wouldn't have found it. And then I found it's from Bruton Music, BFM 16 catalog number, blah, blah, blah. And like all the tracks that they used on the disco are on that album. So I finally found it. And that's what you're listening to right now. That's what you're listening to right now.
Why can't it be called Bruton Music?
I know, right? So I was, I was pleased. It was remarkable. I came in, I left the room, I went to Erica's. Guess what? You know the music? I found it, and she leapt out of her chair, knowing how much this search meant to me, because I bored her about it. And I told Who FX, of course, because I bored him about it. I actually DM'd him saying, "Hey, you talked to Bob Blagden, the director of those episodes. Does he remember?" Like, I went through ridiculously stupid lengths.
Oh God, yeah, that tracks. You're
both disgusted. You're both disgusted.
I'm not disgusted. I'm not disgusted.
You're slightly admiring me, aren't you? You're slightly admiring the dedication, Warren. I can tell.
Neither to either of those.
I mean, the tenacity is admirable, I guess. But I say the same thing about my cats trying to get on the counter in the kitchen. So.
Chris, you put it better than I ever could.
I accept that.
That is perfect.
I accept that. This
a tin ball. Holy crap!
So, my lesson is, if you, like me, are searching for 2/3 of your life for stock music used in the background of a series of a canceled BBC show, someday you might... Yeah, well,
I mean, I criticize, but I'm sure I have plenty of stupid white whales that are equally dumb. So.
Yeah.
I can't think of them off the top of my head, but I'm sure they're there. So
yeah. So anyway, that made me happy. So hence I immediately had to find it and loop it and play it today.
I briefly considered buying an Apple IIc for $800 off eBay. So who am I to talk?
Wow,
really? I didn't do it because
was this recent? Was this recent? Or?
A couple weeks ago, I was just like, I think I'd like an Apple IIc. No, I'm not spending today's money on an Apple IIc. That's
what emulation is for.
Yeah.
For something that has the power of my watch, honestly.
Oh, man.
I do applaud Erica for giving a better response than I think I ever would in that situation.
I would have said, get out.
I mean, a pat on the head might have been appropriate and move on, but
that's nice.
She went beyond.
Well, maybe it was a good acting performance on her part. She's like, oh, he's been going on about this forever. Good for him. Anyway, it's on my iPhone. It's everywhere. I've downloaded. It's like,
and now that you found it, you're never going to listen to it again.
No, Warren. Let me tell you, it's been looping in my head and on my iPhone. It's
looping right now, but yeah,
it's looping as well. Yeah,
it's going to be the backing soundtrack to the next Yoda Savings and Loan.
Oh, all right, I can deal with that.
I had thought about it. I know in a previous one I used the original version of the Cy Snoodles song from Return of the Jedi in the backing track of a disco scene in the Christmas special from 2019.
Just so you can get your jizz in the Yoda Savings and Loan.
To be fair, that is George Lucas's fault. So
that's true. Yeah, I reinstated it. Reinstated that one. The time, it's This Week in Doctor Who History. The Claws of Axos started this day, as we record this, March 13th, 1971.
Debut of Bill Filer.
Bill Filer!
And Mr. Chin from the Ministry.
Men.
Yeah.
Another God amongst men.
And the last story directed by Michael Ferguson, too.
And Pigman Josh, come on.
People. And Pigman Josh, yeah.
Yeah.
I still, anytime I watch Claws of Axos, especially in the last handful of years, just the attitude of Mr. Chin toward foreigners, I'm like, oh man, this is Brexit 45 years before Brexit.
England for the English, man. Good heavens, man. Yeah.
So hard to watch in a way.
Yeah. It's the earliest...
to be fair, the Doctor does not have any papers. Like, it's not like he's a foreigner from, European country X,
he's about as foreign as it gets. It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah.
Even though he looks like a posh Tory.
To quote Sue Perryman, yeah.
Yes, indeed.
It's also the earliest, because the recording session for episode 1 exists in full on, like, it's raw studio footage. It's the earliest known version of raw studio footage that exists for a Doctor Who episode. So
yay, I guess.
It's very exciting to see.
More Roger Delgado that way, I guess.
I'm happy for you. That way.
A tiny bit of Roger Delgado lining up a shot where he's hypnotizing a squatty. But oddly enough, though, because I know this because I was watching Adventure in Space and Time for the commentary I did at Gallifrey 1. There's dialogue, things that John Pertwee says in that, like, could you get out of my eye line, well out of my eye line. Although it's tough to see with everyone dancing around. Mark Gatiss lifted that and used it for William Hartnell's dialogue before he does his big speech at the end in the recording of the Massacre in Adventure in Space and Time. So
it's canon.
Now it's canon. Raw studio footage is canonized in a not quite.
If anybody's going to do that, it's Mark Gatiss. Let's be honest here.
Yeah. Totally. What else we got here? Marco Polo, episode 4, The Wall of Lies. I think that's the one that John Gorey directed.
The Wall of Lies, a.k.a. Screen Rant.
Yeah.
We got this covered.
Yeah, so as such, there's no telesnaps for that because Waris Hussein had the telesnaps for the episodes that he directed. But there are no telesnaps for episode 4 of Marco Polo. So
he spoke of the Sea Devils earlier. Doctor Who and the Silurians, I should say, wrapped up on the 14th.
I just watched that a couple nights ago in my daily quest. It almost lined up. It almost lined up on the original broadcast, but where of course where basically every single Silurian story since Doctor Who and the Silurians episode 7 has basically ended the same way. It's like, maybe we can live together, maybe we can't. Nope. Oh, someone blew them up. What a shame. Rabbits.
Oh, rabbits, indeed.
Rabbits.
Except for the Paternoster gang. She gets off scot-free.
I see. Yeah, because she's good, yeah.
That's his reboot. King's Demons, episode 1.
That's what jumps out at you on
sure. It's the next episode 1 on the list here.
Oh, well, I was going to say
there are
Space
a whole
Pirates,
lot of other better ones.
The Space Pirates episode 2, which exists, which is exciting. That aired on March 15th, 1969.
Which is about all it does.
In the words of Kane from Dragonfire, it exists. That is enough.
Oh, well done. Because it's the previous week. We should have mentioned this if I remember it. The Space Pirates episode 1 was the last episode recorded at Lime Grove Studios. So we're now firmly in BBC Television Centre for the Space Pirates episode 2, which they recorded not onto videotape, but onto 35mm film, which is one of the reasons why it exists today. Because most of the 35mm masters are still in the archives.
So it's basically like Spearhead from Space, you're saying?
No. They recorded it onto 35.
Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha.
Because occasionally, if there was going to be a lot of editing or something that needed to be done, or if perhaps a machine was down or unavailable, they would record it instead of onto 2-inch videotape, they would record onto 35mm. So it looked good, and they could chop it around and not have to worry about actually physically slicing videotape and stuff. And so
it's physically sliced film. So there's that.
Yeah, that was par for the course. So that's why some of these exist on 35mm.
So it'll have to be eventually, if there's ever an animation of the Space Pirates, it'll have to be vid-fired back.
Yes, totally.
For the animation, yes.
Well, not for the animation. But no. But when they put out an animation, they will put out the live episode or the real episode as well if it's available. So they would have, if they do that, and this is on 35mm, they would have to vid-fire it back, is what I'm saying.
I might have to see a flowchart of that to understand what's fully going on. But
okay, so when they put out an animated story, like
I can't
remember the last one that happened, but whatever.
Yeah.
When they have an episode available, they will put it in there along with it, so you can watch the live episode.
Oh, right.
Evil the Daleks is an example of that, and if they've got on 35mm, they have to vid-fire it to make it look like videotape.
Oh, but 35mm, like the Crotons Part 1 and the Mind Robber Part 5 and the Dominators Part 3 are the 3 that jump out of me. When those are vid-fired, they look immaculate. They look so good.
I'm not complaining. I think it's
Space
great.
Pirates too, yeah.
War Machines.
Well, they shot location footage in Doctor Who.
That was 16 or 35?
It was 35. They shot
and it looks great.
All the location stuff up until Abominable Snowman was shot on 16 mil. On 35 mil rather, because they thought, well, we'll just do this. But then once location shooting became more common, the BBC said, this is too expensive. You're shooting on 16 mil from now on. And so, yeah.
And then eventually OB video.
Yeah. Which, of course, is the best for some reason. Why do we enjoy that? Why do we enjoy OB video so much?
I don't know. I can't explain.
Because it doesn't look flat.
Well, it does. Well, it looks the same as the studio. That's the thing. The tripod is an OB video.
Because it looks like proper Doctor Who. That's why. And proper Doctor Who's in quotes.
Yeah. It's going back to the tripods. The tripods looked great because it was shot on OB video, and so you had your model footage of the tripods shot on video merging quite well with the video on the location.
Model footage on video never looks good.
No, but the tripods didn't move that much, so they just sort of stood there, Okay. Yeah. Like the Crinoid in the Seeds of Doom looked better because it was on video as opposed to the Invasion of the Dinosaurs, which is, dinosaurs on video with film location.
There was no making those boys look good at all.
That's true.
You film or not, it just wouldn't work.
That's very true. Where are we at here? We're at the end of Chris. We glossed over the King's Demons. I'm really sorry, Chris, if you wanted to say more about the King's Demons, which aired across 2 days, 15th and 16th of March, 1993. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about? Despite there being some other monumental Peter Davison episodes airing at the same time in other years. Anything else?
Not as such.
No?
Like I said, it's just the next episode 1 on the list.
Oh, okay.
Of course, you're going to talk about Caves of Androzani 3 with that cliffhanger.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and 4. The Peter Davison era ends, and the Adric era ends as well. March 16th. What a dark history. The King's Demons.
I don't know. There's a lot of celebrations, like Return of the Jedi style, when Adric died. So
I suppose
in the streets of London, I'm sure.
Is the Doctor going Adric at the end of Cage of Androzani because he realizes it's 2 years to the day since Adric died in Earthshock?
He's saying vidfire because he's thinking about how they were going to vidfire that 35mm film of Space Pirates. That's exactly what he was saying.
If only they did. I think as an experiment they should they shouldn't do that because they accidentally vidfired the location footage for Day of the Triffids for the Blu-ray, I believe. It's unintentionally vidfired.
My album's going to be called Accidental Vidfire.
Mark that down as an episode title for future use.
You can have a follow-up called Friendly Vidfire.
I get it. So yeah, big days in big day in history. March 15th and 16th for the Peter Davison era. Earthshock, King's Demons, and Caves of Androzani.
For the 16th, episode 1 of Fury from the Deep, which I finally watched not that long ago.
Oh my God, really?
I have.
The DVD with the animation, yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that came out like 2-3 years ago, Chris.
It came out a while ago. Yeah.
This is what I love about Chris. He will complain until he's blue in the face about something not arriving and then never watch it.
Yeah. Because, once I have it, I have it.
I'm not criticizing it. I think it's great.
Until I have it, I don't have it.
Yeah. Have you watched...
that's a pretty straight line of logic there.
Have you watched Web of Fear yet, Chris?
No. Evil of Daleks is going to come before that, which I have yet to watch.
Seeing that you have 2 copies now, given that, do what you want with those
one
two.
Is
I
sitting here
stole 2/3 of the way through Evil of the Daleks. I have yet to get back to it. It's sitting in my Xbox, waiting for the rest of it to be watched, and I have yet to do so.
That's right.
I'm a terrible person.
Well, no, it's fine. Listen, you're supposed to watch them over 7 weeks anyway, Warren, so you're doing it right.
It's been more than 7 weeks. So oops.
I'd never watched any kind of anything with Fury from the Deep, so recons, whatever. The only stuff I'd ever seen was the excised Australian censor stuff. Things like that. Never read the novelization back in the day, even though it was, now a bumper Doctor Who volume or whatever they said on the cover.
Couldn't tell you what it was about.
Fury from the Deep? Oh, there's some fury and it's deep.
It's water.
It's a very Troughton story, and there's not a lot to it. It's pretty thin for a 6-parter. But, that goes without saying for a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I bet you, no offense to the animation, but I bet you if we saw...
Oh my God, the animation is so weird.
Weird, you say?
It looks like people have arms down to the floor.
Yeah, their arms seem a little long. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's quite jarring.
Well,
I'd rather have it than nothing, of course. But
yeah, that's the thing.
And it's no Dreamland, but
Dreamland. Goodness, that's from,
I forgot that existed.
Yeah. Did that air that aired on like CBBC or like, or am I thinking of something else? No, I forget how Dreamland aired.
I think it was on the web. But I could be wrong.
Whatchamacallit, the one with Martha Jones aired on, was it totally Doctor Who?
Yes, Ultimate Quest, am I right in that? That's sort of more traditional Flash animation. And then
somebody who grew up with this is very angry with us right now.
Yeah. I know.
And rightly so, frankly.
I think I'd have
I want to say Dreamland was on the web originally, but I'm not
going
to hold myself to that.
No, it was like, that's a Phil Ford written joint.
It is too, yeah.
Yeah. I think Gary Russell did that one too. Anyway.
Gary Russell did do that one, yes.
Yeah, he did Fear from the Deep, and he's doing Abominable Snowmen, which we saw teaser stuff at Gallifrey 1 last month. So, and the cool thing was, what I like about Gary Russell's producing is that he's made the base of Fury from the Deep a little more multicultural. The background artists and stuff like that, because why not?
Well, in Fury, there's also all the lovely Easter eggs of like the Master and whatnot.
That too, but in Abominable Snowmen, wisely, all the actors who are played by white guys in slight sort of, borderline yellow face, they don't really try to make up. It's not Talons of Wang Chiang, but you know what? It's 1960s TV. Well, now in the animated version, they actually look like they're from Tibet. So it's so good job, Gary Russell, on bringing that up to date, because that would be quite awkward if it wasn't. How do you animate someone in yellowface? That would be just the worst thing. That would just why did you go out of your way to do that? That's terrible.
Well, if they were making an animation of Talons of Wang Chiang, then
or Marco Polo. Yeah.
I won't frequent these corners of fandom, but somewhere out there's a fan who's mad they didn't. No. And that fan, probably a man, probably about 60, is very. He should just be quiet.
So
who I just invented, by the way.
Dreamland aired on quote unquote aired on BBC's Red Button.
Oh, is it a Red Button?
Oh, right, yes.
Which I always forget exists because we have nothing comparable here.
No, we don't.
It's like Gogglebox. I forget that's a thing, because it's like, why is it a thing? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It seems odd.
It was eventually broadcast on BBC Two and BBC HD apparently, but initially on Red Button. Yeah.
Speaking of white actors playing non-white roles, the rumor going around, we're burying this like 35 minutes into the podcast, everyone. The rumor going around, because I was a Phantom Films convention on the weekend where Peter Purves and Maureen O'Brien were at, and they were both talking about documentaries that they've shot for season 2 Blu-ray set. Well, listen, they're shooting stuff. Matthew Sweet even said they're shooting stuff for lots of stuff right now. Like
that could come out 4 years from now, for all we know.
Yeah, exactly. But I know that there was a rumor running around the BFI screening for Revelation of the Daleks that season 2 is next. So this is the second rumor that has been around, circling around the season 2 Blu-ray set being the first Hartnell. I mean, it is only 2 episodes of The Crusade away from being complete. And maybe those exist in private hands, or maybe they don't. I don't know for sure, but keep peeled for a giant box set from season 2. That'll be massive. That'll be like 12 discs. Like, that'll literally just be huge. That thing.
There are a lot of episodes, to be fair.
A lot of episodes. Yeah. Anything else happening this week in Doctor Who history that you want to talk on? There's
Sea Devils wraps up.
Sea Devils.
No, sorry, episode 4. That's 6 episodes. Duh.
Yeah.
No. Episode 3 of the Ark.
So 3 of the Ark, the Return. Yeah. That's where that's where we see the security kitchen for the first time. And
it is too, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's
exciting.
Good old security kitchen.
Yeah. There's an actor in the Ark who also appears in Fear from the Deep. So, and those are his only 2 roles in Doctor Who, I think. So he appeared in 2 Doctor Who's the same week, separated by 2 years. Can't remember his name though, but. Talons of Wang. Speaking of Yellowface, Talons of Wang Chiang, episode 4, aired on March 19th, 1977. There you go.
Yeah.
That's it. That wraps up the Time Lash, the Pink Parrot-themed tripods 1985 version of the Time Lash. I look back at Doctor Who history. Let's, before we get to the Miniscope, I told you we'd be doing this for 40 minutes before the Miniscope happened. I'm really sorry, everyone.
Of course.
Big Finish, the 8th of March, the Protectors of Time has come out, of course, because it came out on International Women's Day on March the 8th, because it's called the 8th of March, Protectors of Time, so that's available from Big Finish.
Starring Dreamland's own Jordan Chung.
Wow, everything's Dreamland today. We've
Seems to be.
out. Yeah, quite something. Well done, us.
Yes, we had everything to do with it.
Finding the parallels between Dreamland and everything else. Quite something.
Doing the work, I believe it's called.
Yeah. The some details of the next River Song box set, the Data Ghost of River Song, which is coming out in August 2022, are out now. 4 different stories centered around River Song, of course. What's great is that Proper Dave is back from the dead from his appearance in Silence in the Library. Hats off to Steve Barry, communications officer, junior lieutenant, I think is his official title.
I believe that's correct, yes.
For saying that Harry Peacock, in brackets, Ray Bloody Purchase, close brackets.
Yes.
And the actual Big Finish press release, that's strictly for Toast of London fans, is back. I didn't realize Harry Peacock was even in Doctor Who.
Nor did I. Nor did I.
So he's in there. Ray Bloody Purchase was in Doctor Who, and he's back. He's back in Doctor Who.
I hope they sneak a couple of Toast of London bits and pieces in there somehow.
That'd be kind of cool. That'd be tough. How would you do that, I wonder?
I smell toast. Am I having a stroke? I'm a digital being.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
That's right. Thank you for the check, Big Finish. That's not sending me a check at all.
Maybe he's a good wind actor, perhaps. He's good at acting in the wind.
Yes.
Reference
Quite
to an
so.
episode. Chris has never seen Toast of London.
References.
With his head, yeah.
Nope.
That's all right. It's a very absurd and funny show. And Matt Berry, I'm really surprised that Matt Berry hasn't shown up in Doctor Who yet. I mean, he's been a robot now. And
I find Matt Berry very polarizing in what he does. Just like Ricky Gervais. Like some stuff I adore, some stuff I just cannot stand.
I don't find him like Ricky Gervais because I loathe Ricky Gervais, and I do not loathe Matt Berry.
Matt Berry voices Advil commercials in the U.S., and it is impossible to watch those without seeing Stephen Toast in the sound booth with Clem Van
without
Dago
yelling, yes!
Yes, I can hear Clem Van. Right, the feeling it is, Stephen, is that I think people want to be felt, like Advil's doing something for them. You mean like this? And then,
yes.
This whole dialogue goes on in my head every time he's talking about Advil. Advil says you can. Anyway, what was it last year? This great story about this tactile Doctor Who book. Visually impaired Doctor Who fan Luce Morehouse was spearheading this as a Kickstarter, basically for first book of Doctor Who living paintings. It's for visually impaired people that can sort of feel their way around the pictures and stuff. And he received the first draft this past week of the Doctor Who book, which was really cool. And there's like pictures of it and stuff, and you can sort of like look at them and feel the pictures, and it's great. It's great for visually impaired Doctor Who fans to have a book that they can enjoy. So good for him. Good for him for spearheading that and for receiving the first draft of that, because a lot of work went into the production of it and the raising money for it. So well done, Luce Morehouse. Before the Miniscope with Ian Stuart Black, some obituaries. When a TV legend has died in the UK, when everyone goes on about the loss of this person, but of course we're Doctor Who fans, so we think, oh, that's the person that was in a 1983 episode of Doctor
Canadians.
Who.
So, if a Bruno Gerussi type, it's the same thing. This will never happen because Brits couldn't care less about Canadian TV, and nor could Canadians. But let's say a Bruno Gerussi-like figure died, whoever that might be. At this point,
Paul
they'd be the same thing in reverse. Paul Gross, there you go. Not that I'm wishing ill upon Paul Gross, but
who knows? Why do we always go back to Bruno Gerussi?
Because he's the iconic mustachioed gentleman of Canadian television.
Yeah, but he was only in one thing. He was only in the
name
19 years.
Other than the guy Louis Del
Al
Grande.
Waxman.
Al
Waxman.
Fair. See, we're doing the exact thing we're talking about. Nobody but Canadians knows who the hell these people are.
Linda
actually,
Barron.
Not even most Canadians know who these people are.
Linda Barron passed away at age of 82. She was in everything. She was in Open All Hours, which is a show we never saw, but she was in Doctor Who 3 times. She sung the Ballad of the Last Chance Saloon, for crying out loud, for the Gunfighters. She was, of course, Captain Rack in Enlightenment, and then appeared in Closing Time, Semisonics / Leonard Cohen's Closing Time in 2012. And, of course, apparently had the audacity to have a very wide and varied popular career in and around her Doctor Who appearances. But
How dare she?
But there's a great, if you want to know all about her vast career on TV and stage and film, Toby Haydock has a obituary in The Guardian, links in the show notes at readyfreescaro.com. And he also has written one for Stuart Bevan, of course, who passed away last week or 2 weeks ago, which the obituary was not written by him. But now he has written an obituary because Toby Haydock likes to write obituary. He doesn't like to, but he writes.
He's very good at it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, he's very keen to set that record straight and give a proper tribute to these people who have meant so much to so many people. So there you go. Obituaries to Linda Barron and Stuart Bevan. Links in the show notes at RadioFreeScaro.com. All right, we've bantered enough. It's time now to talk about 1960s Doctor Who writer Ian Stuart Black in the Miniscope.
Just as I thought. A Miniscope. Now this is outrageous. Who is responsible for this device?
Ian Stuart Black was a writer of 3 Doctor Who stories in fairly short succession when you think about it, in 1966 and 67, those being The Savages, The War Machines, and the Macra Terror. Today, this day in history, we will cover the works of Ian Stuart Black in the Miniscope.
In such a slapdash way.
Oh, it's very much.
Is it though? Well, we'll see. I mean, as we joke often, we our early days of the Miniscope were like we spent like 4 minutes on each story and we were done in half an hour. And now we take someone like Ian Stuart Black and talk about him for like an hour and a half.
But it'll still be slapdash. It can be lengthy and slapdash.
Very
as
true.
YouTube has long since shown us.
Very true.
I somehow don't foresee an hour and a half treatise on Mr. Black.
Well, starting the stopwatch right now. You never know. So
the one positive thing I'll throw out there at the outset is, unlike some other people who could be in the Miniscope, the fact that we have existing audio of everything, at least for a writer, lets us paint a picture that we wouldn't have with a director.
It's tough. I think we did the Patty Russell Miniscope, and I think we kind of more or less skipped over the massacre, because what can you do? There's literally not a second of moving footage from it. So
I think I watched the massacre nevertheless at the time.
We might have done, because maybe
I watched it for different reasons at a different time. I can't remember.
Well, we did a John Lucarati Miniscope, and he wrote that, so maybe that was it too. So we subject ourselves to missing episodes on multiple occasions. I'm not sure we talked about the Savages when we talked about Christopher Barry in the Miniscope, but if we ever did talk about Christopher Barry in the Miniscope, he might still be in the Miniscope for all I know.
I thought we did Christopher Barry.
That sounds very familiar. See, Warren, this is how we get to an hour and a half in the Miniscopes, because we spend...
yes. Well, I wasn't questioning it.
Yeah.
Frankly, but...
Spend the first half and wondering who else is in the Miniscope.
Yeah, no, we've done Christopher Barry.
Okay,
I figured it's because I remember watching a documentary about him, or is that Petty? I can't remember. One of the musicians, an Australian one.
Yeah, there's no. Go ahead.
RFS 632 and 633 in April 2018.
There we are. That rings a bell.
So it's been 4 years nearly.
It's been a while
as we record this.
There's no grand documentary on any DVD so far, of course, about Ian Stuart Black. I hope that that is rectified when the Series 3 Blu-ray comes out, whenever that is, or the Series 4 one. I feel like he's more of a Season 3 one, though, just because he had 2 episodes in short succession. I actually watched these. I watched all 3 of them because, of course, I am in the midst, as a recording, and probably still be when the time comes out, I'm in the midst of watching one episode of Doctor Who a day leading up to the 60th anniversary. And so I thought, well, hey, we spun the Miniscope. We got Ian Stuart Black, and I'm like 10 days away from watching them. Instead of watching them all again right before we record, I would take notes. So I took notes for things that I've watched in late November. Warren has watched the War Machines and the Macra Terror, I believe.
And took notes, yes.
And Chris, you have watched the Macra Terror and the Savages. Now, Was this your first time ever watching a recon of the Savages? Do you remember? It was.
So I'm just looking at the description we wrote for the Christopher Berry thing.
Okay.
Apparently we did talk about the Savages in some regard.
Right.
I know you did your memory cheats on it back in the day as well.
Right.
And that was I remember listening to that when it came out and stuff, but I have zero recollection of what we would have talked about for the Savages with Christopher Berry Miniscope, because and like telesnaps exist and that's it.
Yep. And audio, of course, but
yeah. But I mean, as we'll talk about, I'm sure when we get to like Macra Terror, we have like, sensor cuts from Australia, so we can actually see little bits here and there, and 8mm footage and whatever.
Yeah,
that just none of that exists for.
There is some 8mm.
There's a little bit, because there's one little scene that I can think of. Yeah, that like Dodo and Steven in a corridor in episode 3 or something like that.
Yep, and even Stephen leaving, actually. Obviously, you could tell that someone knew that Stephen was leaving, because there's several shots towards the end of episode 4 that actually gets him heading out, including his very last shot in Doctor Who. So, but those were written by Ian Stuart Black, not directed. We're talking about the writing today, of course. Ian Stuart Black, who had written in TV substantially since the early 50s, and film, of course, up until Doctor Who. He was apparently a viewer of the program. I don't know if people could call themselves fans at the time, but he thought that a writing credit on Doctor Who would give him some cachet with his children. So he popped along to the BBC script outfit and say, "Hey, maybe you'd like an episode of Doctor Who." And the Savages, with the boy, did we dodge a bullet not calling it the White Savages in 1966 was the result. The first story commissioned by Ian Innes Lloyd and Jerry Davis as a script editor. So kind of a new era, really, when it comes to Doctor
Who. It was the first story as well to not have individual titles. Mm-hmm. Individual episode titles, having just followed the Gunfighters, which was the last that did. But
speaking of fandom at the time, I'm sure that angered somebody who wrote a screed to the Radio Times. I guarantee that happened.
I had wondered, and I have tried to look this up, and I don't even know if the information's out there, but I had wondered if Ian Stuart Black had maybe decided to come up with individual titles. Like we talk about John Lucarotti famously doing that for The Ark in Space. For his initial draft of that.
Yeah, I think Jerry Davis did too, actually. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the original drafts of them have to say, but he wrote for Doctor Who. And Chris, what were your initial impressions of the writing specifically in the Savages?
Trope-tastic.
Okay.
I guess. Well, because you got two ostensibly different races, but they're not. They're just you've got the people in charge and the people not in charge, and one subjugating and dehumanizing the other, and it's just, I don't know. It's a very very tropey setup, but it's also the kind of trope that's like sci-fi cornerstone. So you're going to see it everywhere.
There's a lot of that in the pulps, basically, and that's why it's here.
It's got like mid-season 3 of Next Generation like written all over.
I was going to say, or much of TOS too.
Yeah,
I was going to say,
I'm sure many other shows. Lost to Space probably did this all the time too.
Whatchamacallit TOS episode where you've got the people with the white on the left and black on the right up against the people with black on the left and white on the right.
Yeah. I love saying that because my friend Mars and I will just see each other and say, "Beal Loci, I am white on the right side, clearly superior."
Yeah, like it just, I don't know, makes me think of just how the kind of light that science fiction shines on things like that ultimately can be portrayed in a very silly way.
Mm-hmm.
Silly, but at the time, like, you got to remember, people would just kind of tuck that kind of talk under the carpet at the time, right? So you got to remember when it came out, like Beal and Loci specifically, like,
because you can't show actual, modern day human racism.
Yeah,
you can't.
No.
Yeah. But at the same time, you can flip out when Kirk and Uhura sing. Or sing, kiss. What the hell am I saying? She sang all the time.
Science fiction as metaphor, essentially, is kind of what it was.
Science fiction was the only place you could, quote unquote, get away with it, which is all very stupid. Don't get me wrong. I'm not defending it. It's idiotic, dumb attitudes of the 1960s and 50s and 70s.
Yeah.
So,
Like I look at like some, and this might just be, me extrapolating and sort of like placing a history upon something that was written without any of this like in mind, but like I look at it, I was like, is the Savages a take on colonialism? You know, are the Savages in this episode, are they kind of like, you know, many of the African colonies or something like that? Is this him speaking out against that, or was that even like, you know, because there were the colonies were sort of throwing off the yoke of British rule in the early 60s, and so I don't know how prevalent that was in the minds of the public at the time. Like, was it did they feel like, hey, yes, this is actually right, that you know, we should not be basically enslaving these countries as we have been for several decades? Or was it B, our empire is crumbling because these colonies are throwing off the yoke of our benevolent rule? I mean, I don't know where in between those two.
How old was he when he wrote this?
He was in early 50s. In his early 50s.
Okay, so that would be the right demographic to be, rightly or wrongly, writing about that kind of stuff, right? So a younger writer probably wouldn't be thinking about it as much, especially in swinging London. It's, by the way, a guy in his early 50s is writing about swinging London and war machines. Let's get back to that.
Yeah.
So, anyway,
we will when we get there. But yeah. So Chris, you thought it was kind of like bog standardish kind of thing, or
it was in a way, yes. And then also later on, like episode 3 into episode 4. There's like this really, really, really long, protracted like chase stuff, which just takes you completely out of everything as well.
It's tough. The chase scenes and audio reconstructions are tough. Let's face it.
And maybe that's a bigger factor than I'm giving it credit for being. But so no, I because there's some interesting stuff in here for sure, like the whole, you know, the process of like energy theft and injecting it into people. And that's also not a new idea by any stretch of the imagination in 1966, but it's still an interesting thing. And you know, you have to, as a writer, he came up with the whole process of, you know, these vats and this, you know, black liquid that turns clear eventually as the process goes through its steps. And the doctor's personality coming through in the transference process for Jano, like, okay, fine, but they've done a bajillion Savages, and this has never happened before, but now we have it happening. But of course, they also say, "Oh, this is the first time we're doing somebody of this intellect or whatever. So we don't know what to expect." Okay, fine, yeah, okay.
What's really weird, and this kind of ties in with the war machines as well, is that the people on this planet, this unnamed planet, know of the Doctor's adventures. Like, they've been watching him on TV or something. They've been following him through the stars. I found that so weird.
Somebody. I never was convinced that it was the Doctor they were necessarily following. Like, they were following somebody, and the Doctor lands, and he happens to fit the, like, it's a whole it made me think in a lot of ways of like Cortez and the Aztecs. Like, they had these prophecies, as it were, or whatever the proper term is, these writings, these expectations. Cortez shows up and he kind of fits the bill enough, and there's some fortunate timing with the snake and the eagle, whatever. But I was never fully convinced that it was the Doctor proper that they were following through all this stuff. And then even beyond that, like, the Doctor at one point, he's like, "Yeah, I'm just let me go back to my TARDIS. I'm gonna go get all my research into time travel, and I'm just gonna give it to you guys." And and like, it's so sometimes easy enough to forget that before the introduction of the Time Lords, stuff like that could happen, like giving Susan credit for naming TARDIS, things like that, because the show didn't have this history to care about.
The show's completely fallen apart when I didn't follow that slavishly for the last 50-odd years. Come on, way to fail, show.
Once the Time Lords come around, that kind of thing never would have happened. This is just that different of a story, that different of a show back in the day.
Well, one interesting thing, though, is, I mean, for one, it's this might just be because of production, but this was sort of the beginning of the end for William Hartnell, because he was having real problems remembering his lines. Let's face it. He has no lines in episode 3, not a one. He's basically incapacitated for
grunts, and that's about it.
Yeah, for episode 3, because it's such a weird trend and an unfortunate trend. Like the massacre, he disappears for the middle 2 episodes. Celestial Toymaker, this is mostly because of he and John Wiles not getting along, but Celestial Toymaker, he is removed basically from the action for the middle chunk of that. And here, there's the ultimate indignity of basically we're having a different actor having the personality of the Doctor implanted into him. And then Freddie Yeager, who plays Jano, I don't know how you pronounce it, actually sort of does this weird mimicry of William Hartnell's Doctor. It's
coached by Hartnell, apparently.
Coached by Hartnell, but it just felt like, he's being kind of replaced before he's being replaced, and it is kind of tragic in a way.
Well, it made me think of things like The Chase or whatever, where you have the Edmund Warwick replacement of the Doctor, and you kind of have that, but just not in the same package.
Yeah, I suppose so.
There's like Jano, whatever. Mm-hmm. I watched the darn thing today. Actually, you think I remember the pronunciation?
Yeah.
But anyway, he's still a Doctor proxy.
He is very much. He's the Doctor proxy in this. But what is intriguing, and this is the one thing that's sort of the main thing that I took away from the Savages, is that up until now, excuse me, it's basically been the Doctor landing somewhere and trying to get away from that place and being prevented from doing so, unless he's like fighting the Daleks or something. That seems to be a thing that we better beat the Daleks. But this is sort of the first time, I want to think, in the entire show's history at this point, where he is actively sort of helping the oppressed. Like in episode 1, he sort of sees what's happened with the Savages, and he becomes irate. I'm thinking, like, this cannot happen. I'm standing up for the downtrodden. Like, he becomes essentially a revolutionary leader at that point, which hasn't happened. It's that Doctor has always sort of like been fight or flight, and it's usually flight and up, and so I find that sort of the modern interpretation of the Doctor, and this might be Ian Stuart Black, but it also might sort of be an Innes Lloyd thing, because I think that sort of takes ground a lot more in the early Troughton era too. But for the first time, we sort of see the Doctor as an inspirational leader, as opposed to someone who is just looking to get away to safety.
Well, they kind of touch on that in Twice Upon a Time, where they show all the stuff the Doctor's done, and the first Doctor is like, "What in the hell is this? This is not good."
Yeah. Like, you should just be going to the safety of the TARDIS. What's wrong with you getting involved in all things? This is the first time the Doctor actually gets involved, and not like, he's actually changing history of this one planet anyway. That's what I thought. And also just the instincts of the Doctor are what convinced Jano, which we'll call him right now, to overthrow his own empire. Like, he basically is the one who affects change because he has the thoughts and mind of the Doctor implanted into him. So there's good instincts to the Doctor at this point. It took about 3 years, but I think we finally see them towards the very end of William Hartnell's time.
He's definitely come a long way from the guy who almost brains a caveman with a rock, for sure.
Again, much like Peter Capaldi, except it took 3 seasons.
Very true.
It's about the same.
Yeah. Very similar indeed.
As far as story setup stuff goes, one thing I did write down is I really enjoyed how he handled companions, like splitting them up and just the fact there's multiple companions and giving them each something to do that seems, realistic within the framework of the story. Like Dodo going off and discovering the lab, and Stevens with the flower and what's his name, and then the Doctor's sitting in the room with the elders for a very, 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 very long time.
It's a long time. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. But it's a strong Stevens story because, of course, it's his last one, and that's par for the course. Oh, we're underwriting you and you're leaving. Well, we're going to write you a good one for your last one at the very least. So that
Peter Purvis was kind of shown the door, I guess. I mean,
more or less.
Like he didn't want to leave, but the policy of the show at the time was like, you've been around as long as we're going to let you stay around.
Pretty much, we're going to write you out now. Not as we're going to, at least we're going to give you a goodbye scene, unlike Dodo in the next story.
Hey, but that's in my notes. That's in my notes too. But I didn't say in everybody's notes, even if you haven't seen the Savages.
Yeah.
And of course, it's as far as the storytelling process goes, of course, one of the main cast is going to be victim or whatever of the transference process. So, okay, it's the doctor, fair enough, but it's gonna be one of them. Mm-hmm. So often it's the companion, and then I think, well, okay, like Resurrection, the doctor undergoes the thing and whatever. But
it basically happens in all three stories too. It's a doctor in this. It's Polly in the War Machines, and it's Ben in the Macra Terror. At least one of the main cast gets taken over.
Becomes a Dunderpate.
Yep.
And related but kind of different hypnotizing, because like Jano may as well be hypnotized because he's under the control of an external influence. And then of course you got Ben, like you say, Ben, Polly, half or the entirety of the colony or the thing in Macra Terror, they're all hypnotized.
Yep.
So that's a thing in his stories.
Yep. It's a trope, as you say, a thread, a theme, a common thing.
Yeah.
Throughout.
Before we get to Stephen's departure, because his departure is contrived, but at least he gets an out.
That's true.
But like there's I don't know, there's some logical fallacies that I found in the story, like
okay,
like
what?
For example, the when they're destroying all the equipment, it's like okay, so it's said, I can't remember if it's Peter Purvis's, because I watched the narrated version. Can't remember if it's Peter Purvis's narration or if it's actual a line of dialogue, but when the machines are getting destroyed in the lab, it's said that they're destroyed forever. And it's like, okay, well, wouldn't they have like schematics and spare parts and knowledge or whatever for this to get rebuilt?
Nope, plans are all gone.
I do find it's kind
another
of
trope.
It's kind of a great scene where it's one of the few bits of home movie footage where Dodo's smashing it, and even the doctor sort of goes, there is a slight satisfaction to smashing the crap out of something, and this is sort of the birth of the Doctor's a revolutionary leader, tying in with that theme that we see mostly in Macra Terror, but it happens in this too. Them smashing machinery, which was a common occurrence back in the mid '60s. Because how can you trust machinery?
Also known as a Kirk.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. Anything else about the Savages? Warren, I know you didn't watch this one, but I don't know if you have any thoughts on it. But,
no. Nope, none whatsoever.
Okay,
I'm struggling to remember anything about it.
No,
what Chris just said.
I remember I bought the Target book when it came out. Never ever read it. Never. I don't know that I ever sat down. I don't know that I ever sat down and read a plot summary of this since buying like maybe like the Terrestrial Index or something of like that far back in time. Mm-hmm. But I have this vague recollection of listening to your memory cheats about it and kind of like learning whatever I could about the story from that, because I had nothing for knowledge going into.
I must have read the book, because I read every Target book I get my hands on, and I'm pretty sure I got my hands on this one, but I don't remember a damn thing about it.
I mean, it's
one of the later ones, like 126.
Had the neon logos, I recall, but it was definitely one of the later ones.
Maybe I missed it. I don't know.
Also, Ian Stuart Black novelized all of his TV stories. Which is great.
Yeah,
very good.
Pretty cool. Well, let's move on from that to a more perhaps notable Doctor Who story in the history. The first proper time that Doctor Who returns to Earth in the present day.
That was my first comment. This was the first contemporary adventure. Right?
This is it. Yeah,
actual in the time that the show is broadcast.
Yep. The War Machines. Now we do have to stipulate that the idea of a worldwide network of computers sort of gathering up and planning things was not thought up by Ian Stuart Black. It was a Kip Pedler idea. They brought in a writer called Pat Dunlop who developed a storyline, but then he had to bail, and so Ian Stuart Black, fresh off of writing The Savages, is now tasked with writing the script for this, The War Machines from 1966, the last story. We say goodbye to Dodo, we say hello to Ben and Polly, and the swinging 60s, baby.
Yes, indeed. Mm-hmm. So in my notes are some about the writing and some just mostly offhand remarks, if I'm honest about it. So, but one of the things I noticed, especially in the first episode, is that the pacing is, and this is probably as much to do with the writing and directing, it just seems a lot more zippy than most Maybe that's also because it's set in a contemporary time, so that kind of demands it. But it does feel like it's really zipping along pretty quickly for a lot of it, especially in the first episode.
Kind of like you don't have to build a world. You know what this world is.
Yeah, so it seems like it just seemed a lot quicker than a lot of other Hartnells I've watched. One of the things I loved is where they explain Wotan to him, and he gets a smile on his face, and it's like, oh yes, a computer name. I'm knowingly amused about this. I know all about computers, being a smart old fellow like I am, which is all down to Hartnell, really. But it was another thing is the Inferno, possibly the first and maybe only time they've been in a nightclub ever. I don't remember if there's been other nightclubs. I guess they went to that bar where in at the time where Jack is, but I can't think of anything else to be honest.
In classic Who, Wynn has Doctor. Well, they go to a coffee club in Evil to the Dogs Part 1.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. But nothing like the Inferno
Not a
ever
proper
shows up
disco.
again.
Yeah.
And what I love about the Inferno is that it's apparently open at 2 p.m. on a weekday because everybody just kind of wanders in and wanders out, and it's probably the middle of the day, and everybody's just dancing the whatever the hell the twist, let's say, and
the twist.
And Ben is there, and I wrote him down. He's an alcoholic barfly, so of course he's a sailor.
Yep.
And they keep cutting back to people, and the only people doing any work, from what I can tell, are the nerds who are just going like crazy on the computer. Also, one of my favorite things in the first episode is the New York, in quotes, newspaper man with the most ridiculously not New York accent I've ever heard. Can you explain this computer network to us? No, oh God, sir, holy. Anyway,
how well do you remember Morton Dill? Peter Purvis' first character in the Chase.
Dang, if I ain't called and done it again.
I do say in my notes for episode 2, it does take forever to get to the damn War Machines, who I refer to as Cybermen, but also filing cabinets.
That's a good one.
Also, the first part of episode 2 has some quality tramp shenanigans. Really good, like just hobo nonsense. But also, is this the first appearance of Doctor Who hypnosis? Like, because I don't remember it happening beforehand, but maybe it did.
Oh, you mean like hypnotizing Dodo and stuff?
Yeah, like him being a hypnosis expert. Yeah,
yeah, because he uses the his ring essentially.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff here that I don't think he intended to become standards that go on throughout this, but they did.
It does. It's very much like it's like a unit story. Let's face it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm getting to that too later in my notes.
Okay.
I wrote about the episode 2 hot table action to the max because no table is spared from the War Machines. Let me tell you. I did say also in episode 3, there's a lot of escaping robotic talk, and this is where it kind of drags a bit, writing wise. But also, he's a bit of a task in front. Black has a hell of a task in front of him with all these hypnotized weirdos. It is very difficult to make them interesting, and I'm not sure he succeeds. but they're all just a bunch of hypnotized weirdos, just mumbling along and doing stuff. There's only so much you can do to make that interesting. Mm-hmm. So I also noted that the 35mm footage looks amazing, which has nothing to do with him, but it really does. Yep. This is also, I think, the first time the man for the industry who comes around being very British with his unearned authority is a thing.
Literally had it in my notes. Man from the ministry. Yes, this is proto unit down to the man from the ministry with
exactly
with Michael Pickwood's father, William Mervyn, and the role of Sir Charles. Yeah.
And then in episode 4, I noted that Ben is absolutely, and for no good reason, obsessed with Polly, just all the time, like other than the obvious and unseemly reason.
Right.
Why is he all over the fact that Polly, we got to save Polly, we got to like, calm down, Ben, calm down. I do enjoy the one-sided friendship between one and Sir Charles. where he just acts like, well, I'm your buddy, and Sir Charles doesn't seem to care.
There's the scene in like episode 4 after they disable the War Machine, and then they cut to the close up, and Hartnell's got his arm around him for some reason, and I'm not.
Yeah, and Sir Charles doesn't seem to care one bit about any of this, but Hartnell's just like forcing this friendship upon him, which is great. Like, and I don't know if they wrote it like that or not, but it just really works. Also, I noted nobody expected the War Machines to be hostile. They are called the War Machines. What did you think was going to happen? They're not called the Hug Machines. Come on. I also wrote, which you already said, and I'm sure Chris would say the same thing, template for all military contemporary adventures to come. This totally does feel like a unit story. Like, it really does.
It does.
Also, my final note is that they should spin off into a Big Finish series those passerby that just wander by the very last shot. You can do it, Big Finish. You can do it.
I wonder, I look at that scene, and I'm wondering if, I know it was a previous regime, but in Dodo's first scene at the end of the massacre, it was they had an idea of having her walk by Ian and Barbara doing a cameo. and then say, "Oh, is that a police box?" Oh, no, it's just a police box or something like that. And I'm wondering, like, I got vibes. I wonder if that couple, maybe if they had thought, what if we maybe this time got Ian and Barbara to walk by a TARDIS?
I would say the whole thing was probably rushed because the fact they get rid of her in that cursory a fashion, and then that happens with just two people walking by, and it's like blink and you miss it. In fact, I ran it back a couple times to go, is that somebody I should know who it is? Oh no, it isn't. So yeah, I think they just had to, like, the lights were about to go off.
Yeah,
was what I think.
Well, it was on location, but yeah,
but you know what I mean.
Yeah. I take your point. Yeah.
Like Poochie, Dodo went back to her home planet.
Yeah, but it just seemed like they were like, we got to get this thing done. We have to hand this in. It is due in literally 10 minutes. Come on.
Mm-hmm. I find it in another kind of weird thing about how we've seen your travels far and wide, Doctor Who, and in the Savages, and like here it's like, oh, it's the post office tower. Let's go look at this top secret establishment, and they literally just go in, and they're just basically invited in.
Just saunter on in.
They just saunter in.
Oh, you know about computers? Because 10 people on the planet know about computers.
I know.
Apparently, so
it's so weird to me because especially in this day where it's like everyone's suspicious of the Doctor and stuff. But in Ian Stuart Black, and I'm wondering if maybe because I watch Doctor Who, so everyone's familiar with Doctor Who, the character, so he should just be able to waltz in everywhere. And I'm just wondering if that's
I don't know where Ian Stuart Black fell in the social firmament, but he is a man in his 50s who just probably got to waltz into his favorite club and do whatever he wanted, I would assume. So why wouldn't he write the Doctor like that?
That's true. Maybe he had maybe he had psychic paper before we all ever knew about it.
I'm just guessing that he was a posh type. He might not have been, for all I know, but he's got 3 names, so who knows?
Oh, well,
he had some not so psychic paper in one of my favorite Doctor Who scenes ever, when he hangs a little sign on the TARDIS saying "out of order."
Yeah,
that is kind of great. Yeah.
Pretty cool, because policemen might mistake it for an actual one. Yep.
But it is a lot of fun. It does go by pretty quick, I have to say. For a Hartnell episode, it really, her story, it does a pace there that you don't often see.
Yeah, it's kind of revolutionary, this story. It really is. It's
without even knowing it, I think.
Yeah. I mean, even down to like when you look ahead to like the RTD era and how he often would, whenever there was like an alien invasion or something would happen, we would sort of see it through the eyes of the media. We would see, Lachelle Carl or whatever, Trinity Wells on the TV networks, like we'd get actual BBC presenters saying the news and stuff. And here we are with an actual BBC presenter reading the news on the War Machines. And you look at it and go, this is exactly what RTD does in 40 years' time.
As a kid, when I saw a real news person doing fake TV show news, it always blew my mind. Like, how is this happening? Yeah. What is going on? So I can imagine that happening with the audience then too.
Yeah, it had a tinge of reality to it, and it's interesting that it took a couple more years. Like, they never really tried to repeat this up until maybe Faceless Ones is set in present day, I guess, but then Doctor Who really doesn't get down to anything close to this until like the Web of Fear. Mm. It takes a long time for them to sort of like settle what I thought was a pretty strong formula. Maybe the ratings didn't bear that out. It was the end of the season.
Theoretically cheaper too, because all you gotta do is do location footage, and it doesn't. Other than that computer model, it doesn't have to be too fancy. Most of it, to create aliens or anything. Yeah, and I guess the War Machines probably cost a fair bit.
I get at great expense trying to be the next Daleks, essentially too.
I mean, they are pretty cool looking, I have to say, like for what they are.
Well, for us, they're cool looking. Let's say. So.
Well, yeah, okay, fair enough.
But... people malign the cleaners.
They're this.
Paradise Towers.
They're this.
And they're the same.
Because
they're
there's a big
same.
difference.
Very,
the cleaners,
the
War Machines are not.
Same.
It's even got a track on the front.
Camp.
Oh no,
the War Machines are not as camp, and there's not as much camp nonsense happening around the War Machines.
I think they're cousins.
And they smash a table and cardboard.
I think they're cousins. I think the cleaners are to the War Machines as the Ood are to the Sensorites. They
are kissing cousins.
Can you imagine that Thanksgiving dinner? Because I don't want to. Your lifestyle is inappropriate, smashing a cardboard box. I just want to be me, says the cleaner.
Chris, do you have thoughts on the War Machines? I know you didn't watch this one for this, but we have watched it.
I've also seen it a crap ton of times.
Yeah.
It looks beautiful, as we've talked about when we talked about Michael Ferguson, I'm sure.
Yeah. R.I.P.
R.I.P. Yes. I don't know, I mean, it's kind of weird to look at a story like this and think of all these elements of the story that were literally fantastical at the time it was made, and now they're just so so mundane. Like,
I mean, these guys are Roombas, basically. Big deal.
Yeah.
well, it was just the notion of a worldwide computer network. Huh?
Yeah.
How
That
many
would
computers
never
do I have?
happen.
I have one, two. Do you count my Apple TV as a computer? And my cable box.
yeah.
I got at least 6 computers in front
It's
of
got
me.
an iPhone processor in there.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Phone, computer, yeah, tons.
Yeah, like the notions of things like that just seem being so weird and out there and literal sci-fi at the time, and now it's.
And I have a
just so
Wotan on my
mundane.
wrist, honestly, and so do you.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. You can look. It's funny. Sometimes I look back at stuff in like the late 90s, and like people are talking on massive cell phones and stuff like that. And I kind of find that funny, but I shouldn't, because that's what technology was at the time. And I don't find this like, I'm not going, oh, isn't this silly? Look at those massive computers. They're the size of a house. Because they were at the time. Whatever. This is what technology does. But
It's not like you could have it different. No.
I don't. What is it about mobile phones? Because when you see a non-smartphone, you cannot help but giggle.
it's tough, isn't it? It's tough.
It really is.
But I mean, I look at a computer that's the size of a fridge, and it's like, yep, absolutely. Maybe because maybe there's tape machines in it. Maybe that's what.
You know what part of it is? Part of it is like, because we don't do this about old rotary phones either. Probably
No.
is we're just so used to it from growing up around this stuff and seeing it on TV in this way. When we were kids, you'd see computers that were like a box with a bunch of lights going. I predict the end of the world. Like that was still a thing up until the 80s for us.
Yep.
Oh God, yeah.
They were very much a scary thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just think of how computers were portrayed in like Star Trek TOS.
Yeah, I'd like to know what Gen Z
Or
thinks when
Doctor
they see
Who
these stupid boxes. Like that must be just ridiculous to them, because it kind of is.
It is a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, War Machines is pretty great. I think we all agree on that
It was
one.
a lot of fun.
No?
Yeah,
I hate when people just call it Votan all the frickin' time. Can't you just settle on something and stick with that?
It's weird.
Well, if you have a German accent and a crazy hair and sunglasses, you can call it Votan all you like.
Yeah.
Well, sure, but that's absolutely 0 characters in the story.
True, yes. But they also call him Doctor Who, which I'm sure caused much consternation.
At one point, Wotan calls himself Votan.
Yeah.
Like,
Then it is canon, Chris. You must accept it.
nothing to do with Ian Stuart Black.
No, nothing to do with that. Apparently, he wrote. I think this is according to the infotext on the DVD. Apparently, Black wrote Doctor Who as the name of the character because that's what Wotan thought his name was. Okay. It's not him going, oh well, obviously the character's name is Doctor Who, and he keeps calling him that because he noticed no other characters actually call him Doctor Who. So it's just Wotan that calls him that, and then the people who are possessed by Wotan that call him that. So. What I love about it is that we're still talking about that over 50 years later, and it's great. It's great. It's awesome and hilarious.
I'm kind of shocked and surprised we are.
Yeah.
Apparently, also, that's the only time he's called that on screen until Missy calls him that.
First time. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm Doctor Who. These are my assistants.
Although all through the Moffat era, there was a lot of teasing of that.
Oh,
nonsense.
yeah.
Mostly for Moffat's own amusement, I'm sure.
And Peter Capaldi's probably too. Yeah.
And Capaldi, for sure.
Yeah. Delightful. Well, let's move on to the third and final of our Ian Stuart Black episode stories. It's the Macra Terror. Of course, the missing one. We covered two or three of these things are missing. Thankfully, animated. I think I watched the animated version most recently, but I used to rely on the Telesnap reconstruction of this one. I don't know how you two watched it.
When
I
I
watched
first
the black and white animated one.
Nice.
When the Macra Terror was one of the first recons I watched full stop many years ago.
Wow.
This time around, I watched the color widescreen animation.
Well, it's a bit blasphemous, but all right.
Nope.
So you could watch it any damn way you want,
Yeah,
Chris.
I
I watch it. Exactly.
I think I like having both of them around.
Thanks, BBC America.
Yeah, there are
I
three.
wanted to watch the black and white one, but
There's-
I think it's cool they have both.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen it until today when I watched it after watching Macra Terror, but Josh Snares on YouTube has a 8 or so minute video comparing the original telesnaps versus the animation, and how close they kept things in some regards, and how much license was taken in other regards.
I remembered, by the way, that the first time I saw the color version of this was at friend of the show, Graham Burke's place in Toronto. So it was more than a couple years ago, I guess now, thanks to
it came out in 2019.
Yeah.
So.
That makes
must have been right before. Yeah, okay. It must have been then I saw it then, yeah.
But just one of the things that Again, nothing to do with Ian Stuart Black, of course, but one of the things that I appreciate about having the animation now is, so I'd mentioned earlier that there's a censor, Australian cuts to it for censorship purposes, like kind of violent stuff, whatever. Discovered by Damien Shanahan.
Yes.
Back in the day. Anyway, we can see through these censor cuts because we have not much other moving footage other than some 8mm stuff in episode 4, but we can see just how impractical the practical macro prop was in the original production, whereas in the animation, they've got legs, they can move, and it just like as for the visual part of the storytelling experience, the animation is a very nice thing to have. So you can actually imagine the terror that could be involved with these overgrown bacteria or viruses, whatever they are, that you just do not get from this static prop, because just to throw Paradise Towers out there again, if you think of like Croagnon when the door goes up and before the chief character goes in, that's kind of what a macro looks like.
So what you're saying is Paradise Towers is basically ripping off all the good ideas and making it crap. Gotcha.
Possibly.
Well, the story itself is based on the J.G. Ballard book, so yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah.
All right, fair enough.
So there.
All right.
Who
wants to go first?
I've got notes. Who wants to go first on the Macra Terror?
Steven's going first.
Well, I find that this. I mean, Ian Stuart Black. Some of his earlier work in television was on Danger Man with Patrick McGoohan. He was sort of a compatriot with Patrick McGoohan, and I wonder. This came out in '67. Patrick McGoohan is sort of like thinking of ideas like about the prisoner after leaving Danger Man as well, and I wonder how many conversations they had about ideas that would eventually lead to the prisoner and maybe what this led to. Because this very much feels like the prisoner.
That's my first note. There's a real forced jolliness prisoner vibe to this whole thing.
Yeah, there's
with all the drum majors and all
there's
that.
There's the drum majors.
I also refer to it as Aldous Huxley by way of a Sgt. Pepper album cover.
Very much.
But another thing I was thinking about, how there was this whole thing, and it was also Patrick McGoohan who did it the best. But there's this whole thing of looking at the dark underbelly of all the happy, colorful 60s stuff, which goes away in the 70s to straight up dystopia, right? Where things are just ugly and bad and brown and blecky and grainy as hell. But in the 60s, it's like, la-di-da, everything's wonderful, peace and love. And people go, well, wait a minute, though. With all this peace and love, what's actually happening? Humans still suck. And that's where this kind of comes in, although it's a much lighter touch than Prisoner is.
Yeah.
Not as well done.
That's like nail on the head for the Savages, because you've got all this nasty stuff going on, and Stephen and Dodo's tour guide is called Flower.
Yeah.
Which is a very 60s
and that's a real
thing.
60s thing where it's like they have this whole everything's wonderful, but also we're bombing Vietnam and all sorts of other terrible stuff's happening. So
there's definitely that here, and like I think this is sort of Troughton was kind of an architect to begin with, but I think his character is sort of really rounding in here at this point. Like it settles down with the moon base, as we've talked about on the Miniscope before. How Morris Barry, the director, sort of like reins everyone in, and the silliness and the desire for costumes and silly hats and voices that Troughton does in the early days because he doesn't really know what he's doing is sort of all toned down. And here is basically the eccentric uncle of Doctor Who, the anarchic counterculture. Let's face it, like even in the scene that's this is blasphemously excised from the animation version, where they go through basically a spiffing up machine. How they go in and their clothes are all polished up and everything's all nice, and they come out and they all look shiny and happy. And the Doctor goes in and goes like that and goes in again and just messes himself up again because he's messed up. It's basically number 6 going, taking his little penny farthing button off his coat and saying, "This is not me." He's going when Pilot accuses the Doctor of destroying the hypnosis equipment, and he goes, "You admit it?" And the Doctor goes, "I'm proud of it." This is like him deliberately. Like, bad laws were meant to be broken. I mean, this is all the stuff. Who does he go to first when he gets to the colony? He goes to the one person who is actively acting out against it, and Medoc. He sort of goes towards.
Who I'm referred to as Ringo Starr and Get Back.
Probably, yeah. And then
Ringo Starr with a bowl cut.
Yeah, and then the one last prisoner reference that I'll make is that at the very end, when they solve everything, and what I love about it is that, if it was a different story, like maybe the Savages where they smash all the machines, they only get rid of the Macra. It's still a superficially happy colony. And what is interesting is that the Doctor's sitting there and they're all being like, bugging out and being piecing out and all that. And then Ben says, guess who they've drafted to be the new pilot? It's you. Basically,
and he says, "I'm out of
basically, here." It's like you are the new number one, which is very ties in with how the prisoner ends, which I found very intriguing. So yeah, I feel like this is the Macra Terror does the prisoner before the prisoner came along, with a side of 1984 in there as well. I think.
Although one of my notes in episode 4 is that they should have gotten all this cheerful stuff. They should have been sort of threaded throughout, as opposed to the beginning and the end mostly. Like. Although I did also say
it was threaded throughout though, because you often had background music and the klezmer or whatever.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess.
And the rehearsals for the cheer team and all that.
Yeah,
I did say this is like being in dead detention and Stalin is your principal, because that's how it feels.
Yeah,
and then even at the end, they talk about having an annual dance to commemorate the strangers.
Mm-hmm. Like it's still a screwed up system.
Oh, it is.
Also, I said bureaucracy and crabs. So, what a combo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, because throughout the thing, when before you figure out or are shown whatever, before you know why the Macra are how the gas is keeping them alive and whatever, there's all this secrecy about what they're doing there and why they're mining the gas and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So if the Macra are gone and no longer in charge, do they have an economy?
Yeah, what is
that? Are they going to be there in a year's time?
How did the Macra get to New York, or is this New York? Like, did they actually establish that? Is this where New York is built?
Macra travel.
Or did the Macra...
I think they spread up in different places of the universe, perhaps.
Okay, all right.
But I did watch bits of Gridlock after watching Macra Terror, and there's the scene where Tennant's doctor talks about how the Macra were world builders or some such, but now they've devolved into this.
Yes.
This thing, so no, I have no idea how they got to New.
Remember how excited we were that the Macra showed up in Gridlock? By the way, yeah, this tiny morsel that we got at the time. Also, I love Gridlock so much, but anyway,
yeah, you do.
There's other cool scenes, but with Troughton in there where he's he does math. And sort of tries to figure it out. He gives himself 10 out of 10. Then afterwards, I got that right too. 11 out of 10.
11 out of 10.
Makes me laugh every time.
I said, one of my notes is, I'm getting some very strong 2016 vibes off of Nobody Believes in Macra. Like, well, this is starting to get a little too close to home here, Macra Terror.
No such thing as Macra. Yep.
Yeah. This is sounding a little familiar to the last 5 odd years we've dealt with. Mm-hmm. Also, I said there's just not a lot of, like, for a while there, and I understand why, because they're asleep and all the rest of it, but they just kind of ditched the companions essentially for quite some time.
Yeah, I feel like it's in his Lloyd.
I don't know what to do with these guys. So like, what the hell?
Well, this is like the first Jamie story, the first story that they actually wrote with Jamie in tow, like with him. Okay, we know he's part of the team, so now we're going to write around him, and then of course they just have Polly being, attacked by crabs and such, and Ben
being a complete dolt, way more than you'd think he would be.
Yeah,
and Annika Wills definitely gets the chance to yell in this story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One thing I do like, and this has got nothing to do with the writing, is and it's basically the animated part, is I noticed when the foot movements of the crabs happen, it coincides with the low bass line in the music, and it really works. I'm like, oh, you sneaky buggers, that's really cool. They're like, dun, 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 dun. It's kind of subtle, but I'm like, I caught you.
Yep, early radiophonic workshop score from Dudley Simpson there.
There's a Tannoy announcement that says "Stand by for action." I don't know which. I wrote down Fireball XL5 agenda. I don't know if it's actually Fireball
Stingray.
XL5.
I think it was Stingray. Actually,
yes.
So according to the Doctor Who discontinuity guide, that's all I know it from. But yeah,
stand by for action. Oh, lovely.
Chris, did you have thoughts on Macra Terror?
Yeah. I mean, it's not a classic by any means. I don't think.
It's fun though. It is fun.
It's interesting. I mean, I talking of the whole like drum majors and the music and the performances and like that is creepy as hell.
And it's also in your face and obvious in a way only the 60s is able to pull off.
Yeah.
Like if you set the prisoner in the 50s or the 70s, it just wouldn't work.
No.
Like it just wouldn't.
I think
it has to be this specific period of time for you to accept it.
I think you're probably right because I think of things like Carnival of Monsters, for example, like the sideshow aspect of I can't think of their
gets a free pass for whatever reason.
It's unnaturally happy. It's like a clown as a society,
and
essentially.
It seems way more out of place in something like Carnival of Monsters.
And again, I wonder if this is an age thing because like I wasn't around in the 60s, but I was a kid in the 70s, and so this stuff was still around at the time, sort of seeping in the background, as other not so much stuff like that was shown as well. So maybe that's just why I'm so used to it and going, oh yeah, this makes sense because of that. So I have like a semi-touchstone where somebody younger than me wouldn't. And somebody older than me be like, well, whatever, that's just what it was at the time. Maybe it's special to me because I was that age, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who knows? It's a different time, 67. What a weird, hippie, dippy time for culture, and Doctor Who was no stranger to it.
The best parts of the story, I think, are absolutely down to Pat Troughton.
Yeah.
Right at the outset, I mean, you've got Troughton's team, like, and since it's just so Troughton, they're just there. They're there, and they're in the middle of things like bam, and the story's underway.
Yeah.
Like in the first like whatever couple minutes, and then of course base under siege, or I guess base which has been sieged.
Yeah.
The siege is over, really. But that's so Troughton. And then you talk about the chalkboard scene and just him talking to was it Aura or was it Pilot? Who was he talking to in that thing?
I don't remember.
No,
it's Pilot.
Anyway, talking about how the colony's computers took days to make these calculations that the Doctor did, and with no basis of information in minutes or hours or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
The Doctor's just complete disobedient nature, like just flaunting everything and throwing everything back in people's faces.
I know.
So whether it's the hypnosis machine or just even at the outset or in the early part where he releases Medoc from the cell, he's like, well, he's only here because of me in the first place anyway, so of course I let him go.
Yeah.
Like, just you have no authority over me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do find like this. I don't know if it was like Ian Stuart Black's writing that got this out of Patrick Troughton, or perhaps Patrick Troughton was sort of arriving here as an idea for a character and just happened to coincide with the script that Ian Stuart Black provided, because it just feels like a match made in heaven. Like this, I'm not sure he gets this revolutionary again in Doctor Who. Like he does have streaks here and there, but he's very much anti-establishment in this story for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely nice to have Jamie involved properly, because I mean you think of Moonbase or Underwater Menace or things like that where he's just there because they brought Fraser Hines on before talking to anybody else for the writers.
Yeah. Well done, Innes Lloyd. Innes Lloyd cast management was not his greatest strength. Let's face it.
Yeah. No, if I had to sit and watch the original version, if it still existed, I don't think I'd have a problem with that as such, but this is one of the ones where I think animation really, really benefits the story.
I think you're right. Yeah. With the as I've started to say now on this show, I feel like the animated versions are kind of like just the target novelizations of missing episodes. They're not supposed to be, strict retellings of what was going to be happening in the 60s. It's an interpretation.
But they capture the essence.
Yeah, they do. They capture the essence and the interpretation of it. So, which I think is pretty cool. Well,
yeah.
Any last thoughts on Ian Stuart Black then, across all three stories, before we ask the inevitable question about him, which we can't. I mean,
it's interesting. What he did was kind of ahead of its time, and I'm not sure if that was on purpose or not. for a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, accidental revolution. Mm-hmm. Did they accidentally stumble on something that they thought, hey, this is what Doctor Who should be, or did they just say, yeah, this be kind of cool?
At the same time, this show was still making it up as it went. You know what I mean? Yeah. I was in that phase of what it was about. So
yeah, I think so.
So why the hell not? Let's see what he could do. Like
I would have been intrigued. Yeah, after this, having sort of known what the format is and kind of had his, he has repeated themes throughout the course of these his 3 stories. It would have been intriguing to see what he would have done, like with a straight up base under siege story from season 5 or something like that, or goodness me,
like a Pertwee story or something.
Or a Pertwee story, even given how many script problems they're having in season 6. I mean, God, they should have reached out to Ian Stuart Black, knowing that he could come up with something pretty quick, and maybe found something instead of the Space Pirates of the Crotons, but that we wouldn't have Robert Holmes, but whatever. So yeah, it would have been intriguing, but alas, Ian Stuart Black died in the mid-90s, having largely retired from the script writing business back in the late 70s. So we did not have that chance, but at least we have these 12 episodes across 3 stories, 4 of which exist to enjoy his work. Well, that just leaves us to select the next victim of the Miniscope. Very exciting, Chris. You got the
as I look at the shining, glittering letters of the Miniscope. Michael Ferguson has not yet been picked, so we have not talked about him.
Oh my God!
Be it for War Machines or anything else.
Well, that would be exciting to get, and now we have a 1 in 16 chance to get him, apparently. So,
and I've probably jinxed it.
Probably have. I think we jinxed it the last time too. So, we'll see what happens if we jinx it this time. When I ask you, Chris, to start the randomizer now. There we go. Ian Stuart Black. This is the part where we just sort of ramble and chatter while the sound goes and the spinning goes, but
blah-diddy, blah-diddy, blah.
I mean, there's only 3 writers left, right? That's what we've determined.
Well, there's 3 writer things, yeah. 2 of them are combinations of writers.
Slutson Lohman and
Hazeman and Lincoln.
Slutson Lohman, Hazeman Lincoln,
and Terry Nation.
Terry Nation's still on the board. Amazing. Well,
wow.
Let's see what we got.
Dodged us long enough, Nation.
Here we go. Stop.
We are rounding out the last of our composers with Mr. Kerry Blyton.
Nicely done. Nicely done.
Oh, no.
Why is this a no-no? Is it that bad? Come on.
You've heard the score for the Sea Devils?
He's not the Sea Devils. He's not the Sea Devils.
He doesn't. Oh, that's Malcolm Clark, or not Malcolm Clark.
Kerry Blyton, everyone.
Yeah, anyway, so he does Silurians, I know.
Doctor Who and the Silurians, famous for it being crap. He does the score for Death of the Daleks, famous for it being crap. And
I love the story.
You love the story. It's all saxophones, and they decides, you know what? Saxophones really worked. Let's do it for Cybermen in Revenge of the Cybermen, which is pretty crap. So much so that they got Peter Howell to come in and at least Zeus it up with some synthesizers on it. So, man, that thing has been sticking out like a sore thumb for like 12 years on the Miniscope, and I thought for some reason that we would just avoid it. It's happening.
Nope.
I will take any Revenge of the Cybermen viewing. No problem. I'll do it.
And
sure.
I'm always happy to watch Death of the Daleks.
Yeah, thank you for taking that hit.
I haven't watched Doctor Who and the Silurians in lots of years as well either. So, Kerry Blyton, everyone, in the Miniscope next time.
All right.
Well, it's a Miniscope. We can put it off as long as we want.
Yep, coming sometime in 2025, the Miniscope for Kerry Blyton, everyone.
Well, I'll give you a bargain, Internet. When COVID is cured, we'll do this Miniscope.
There's your impetus, non-maskers.
Yep.
Apparently he did the theme for Bananas and Pajamas.
He sure did.
Okay.
We'll talk about that and more on the next Miniscope. Kerry Blyton, everyone. Until next time, I am Stephen in Edmonton.
Warren in Vancouver.
And Chris in Edmonton.
So long for now.
You've been listening to Radio Free Skaro. Find us online at radiofreeskaro.com, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr at Radio Free Skaro, subscribe to us on iTunes, and donate to the show at patreon.com/Radio Free Skaro. Thank you.